up a dive. Feel the vibe, get ready to ignite. Untold stories in the airways, flying through the night. Experience voices, tales so bold. Streaming live, the truth unfolds. Untold Radio Network, where secrets come alive. New episodes daily, the mysteries thrive. Great guests, super chat, so I remember I share and subscribe. Join the side where truth can't hide. Aliens in the attic, UFOs in the sky. Cryptids lurking, oh my, oh my. Ghosts in the hallway, whispering your name. The paranormal, the unexplained. Become a VIP, get the inside scoop. Unlock the mysteries, be part of the group. Live streaming stories, they're talking to you. Super chats buzzing, join the crew. Untold Radio Network, where secrets come alive. New episodes daily, the mysteries thrive. Great guests, super chat, it's a wild member ride. Share and subscribe, join the side where truth can hide. So if you've got the guts and you want to explore, tune into the Untold, it's what you're looking for. From aliens to ghosts and all that's unseen. Untold Radio Network, where the world's mysteries convene.
Good morning and welcome to the Paranormal Spectrum here on the Untold Radio Network. I am your host, Barnaby, and today's show is going to be pre-recorded. That's right, guys. We are not in the studio live today, so if you have any questions or comments and we are ignoring them, it's just because we're not live. First up, guys, coming up this weekend, the CAPS team, Cryptids, Anomalies, and the Paranormal Society, we are going to be in Lexington, Kentucky at CryptidCon. Check out all the great people that are going to be there. Everybody from Giorgio Tsoukalos and Thomas Winterton to Russell Accord, Jessica Chobit, Brian Murray, and a whole bunch more here. Mark Marcel, whole bunch of cool people there. If you're anywhere near Lexington, Kentucky, head on over and check that out. Then, guys, we head up to Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, November 30th for the Soul and Synergy Expo. And then in December, we head back to Milwaukee, there it is, for Krampus Fest. So we have a winding down here for our events for the year. And then coming up next year, guys, we are going to be at Wisconsin Cryptids, Anomalies, and the Paranormal Convention. Going to be a great time out there. If you want to show your support for all things here on the Untold Radio Network, here's how.
Hey, Untold Radio Network fans. Want exclusive perks and to support our channel? Introducing our YouTube membership program with 3 amazing levels. Get loyalty badges that level up to different cryptids the longer you're a supporter. How cool is that? You'll also get access to custom Bigfoot emojis and priority in chat. Upgrade to Backstage Pass for exclusive wallpapers, photos, status updates, discounted books, and merchandise. Go all in with the producer level for everything mentioned plus member shoutouts. Ready for an enhanced experience? Join now, pick your membership level, and let's make this journey even more exciting together.
right, guys, joining me today on the show is Morgan Knudsen. She has been involved in the world of paranormal phenomenon for over 20 years. Her story began with her great-great-grandfather, Dr. Albert Durrant Watson, who was one of the presidents of the Association of Psychological Research in Canada in 1918. It was the first paranormal association developed in Canadian history. Really cool. She is the co-founder and leader of Entity Seekers Paranormal Research and Technologies in 2003 and has experienced all kinds of stuff. She has been featured on a lot of television shows from the Discovery Channel and TNE, and most recently, My Haunted Hometown. So please welcome to the show, Morgan Knudsen. Welcome to the show.
Hey, good to be here.
Good to have you. How are you doing today?
Oh, I'm good. It's fall here in Alberta, and it's all the leaves are changing colors, and it's beautiful. So, I mean, nothing to complain about.
It is freeze warning here. It's going to be like it was 20 something last night, and it's not even halfway to Halloween, and we're already into this. Oh man.
We're looking at snow on Monday here, so we'll see. See what happens.
Right, you win. Wisconsin is no longer the frozen capital here. Right.
I don't know. It's in constant competition. I think it's just yeah.
Awesome. So, we have both had the opportunity to be part of a brand new television series. It's all out now on TNE in the free streaming and stuff, so you can go check it out there. But My Haunted Hometown, it was a really cool program. You want to talk about how you were involved in it?
Yeah, sure. So I usually get called into shows like this just to add expert opinion, basically. So like they'll send me cases and whatnot, and they just usually want my take on what the cases are, and I come about these shows really differently than a lot of other people. My background is in parapsychology. I've done a lot of work in the academic field. I taught parapsychology in post-secondary for quite a long time here in Canada. So my background isn't chasing ghosts around with a video camera. My background is academia, and so when I get called to do a show like this, often, I'm collaborating with people who have their PhD in parapsychology, and I talk to different professionals before I bring my opinion. And I'm not a ghosts and orbs and demons person. So usually my stuff ends up on the cutting room floor because of that, because it's not sellable. But I take these shows really seriously. Like if I get asked an opinion about one of these cases, I try to bring the best level of opinion that I possibly can, because I know the people who told their story are going to watch it. So I hope that you hope that it gets left in, but you don't have any control over that once you do the show. But I feel like if nobody from the world of parapsychology comes in and steps in to do this, then these things tend to just go haywire, and you've got people that are saying all sorts of crazy on the shows and whatever. So that's my role. That's how I see my role in it. And Blue Ant has asked me, Blue Ant Media, who does My Haunted Hometown and whatnot, has asked me in the past to be production consultant and whatever. But I mean, you kind of end up putting in your 10 cents and they'll use about 1% of it, right? So it's just the way it is.
It was really cool. That was the first time that I got to film for a television show, and a couple months later I actually filmed for PBS again, so that was really cool too. But it's a lot different than people think, and you walk into this and, they sit you down with two cameras a couple inches from your face to do these interviews and stuff. And it was quite the experience. And, like I've talked about on the show before, there was two, episode 7 and episode 8. My team was featured in episode 7 with the haunted house in Menominee, Michigan. And then myself and Keg were featured in episode 8 for the haunted strip club. And so really cool. I've talked about those before. What are some of the cases that you got to work on specifically?
Oh God, don't ask me that question. They all blur together. I've done so many of these shows and so many cases that after a while they just kind of meld. I think the episode with Strathroy I found really interesting. I mean, I don't really remember cases specifically when I do these shows, but I often like in this case, like I remember areas, because a lot of these shows, of course, is my haunted hometown, so it's based on towns. So I remember areas quite often. And the my podcast co-host Mike Brown, his other show has a co-host who actually grew up there in Stratford. He had some really interesting stories to share over and above what I got case history wise on my haunted hometown, which was really interesting, because it's always what's fascinating with these shows is that, especially with this one, is that these little towns that you don't really know too much about, and the fact that most of them are in Canada is unique, because Canadians, many people don't know this, but Canadians don't like to talk about this stuff. And so you go to a small town in Canada and you're just like, oh yeah, like we're talking about paranormal stuff, and they're like, oh, we don't talk about that, right? So it's interesting that they were able to get so many people to actually discuss some of these cases, because it is not a cultural norm here at all. So it's very interesting. So yeah, so it's more the areas that I remember above anything.
Very cool. Yeah, it's definitely a unique show, definitely a new way to look at it. You know, there's been the shows like the Ghost of series where they go to a certain location and talk about how all these different hauntings and stuff may be all connected and stuff, and it kind of has that very same feel, just kind of telling it from the people's standpoint instead of like the investigator standpoint. So it was a very unique show.
Well, and I think the important part about it is the fact that it's allowing some of these locals to tell their story, because I think, you know, many times people think, well, I'm just going to go dig up the history of this town. The history of the town, people aren't writing this stuff down, right? Like if you're a researcher, you want to talk to the locals. They're the ones that are going to tell you what's up. Like, it's not going to be the thing you find in the newspaper or the thing, you know, you're not going to find some grand discovery somewhere because somebody's written down this crazy thing. That's, chances are it's not. Chances are you're going to find these really unique places by talking to local people, because they're the ones that have been there forever. You know, like I mean, I'm from Alberta, so I mean, we've got a plethora of small towns here, and whatnot. And then people have had homesteads here for a very, very long time. You know, in Ontario, same thing. You've got these really, really old areas. I mean, old Canada standard, which isn't super old, but it's old enough. And, you know, it's the locals that are going to come out and tell you, like, you know, oh yeah, you want to know about this, you know, go ask Farmer Joe over there. He'll tell you, he'll set you straight. And that's where these unique stories come from.
Mm-hmm. Well, you found that firsthand with doing the bean snapper stuff that we were involved in with this. You know, when we first started investigating in 2020, you know, there was so much misinformation and stories. They were true, but they were from a different building in town. You know, like, oh, there's a shooting stabbing that happened in the ballroom of this place. It happened, but it was at a bar down the street.
Right.
And then there was the 3 children that died in the fire, which is true. And it's really interesting because it's such a small town that everybody in the town, like you said, you can go back, the whole family history is still there. And you talk to anybody in these towns and they you know, they gave us all the information on this. And then being able to go and look up the newspaper articles and stuff, once you know where to look, and then everything kind of falls into place. And it's so interesting, so valuable that when you do the research to talk to the locals and get that correct information.
Oh, absolutely. And you know, we're at a time in history where the media has really run rampant on history and a lot of stories. And we're at this point now, and I've seen this with a number of cases, specifically the Enfield haunting in Enfield, England, which viewers will know as the Conjuring 2 movie, you know, Enfield, England. But we have, that's a great example of the media beginning to rewrite these cases and changing what people remember. And that's like you were saying, why it's so important to go back and actually really start looking at the history. Like there was something that came out recently specifically about the Enfield haunting, and they completely removed Guy Lyon Playfair's name from the story. And it's like, this was the chief investigator, you know, along with Maurice Grosse. that investigated this on behalf of the Society of Psychical Research, and they're removing him, right? And it's like, so now people are thinking, oh, it was Ed and Lorraine Warren's case. Oh, it's this, it's, and it's like, we're starting to see that what people are remembering and the stories that people are telling about these places completely skewed based on whatever the media's got going. So I think it's important to be able to document what's happening with a lot of these towns, a lot of these locations and whatever, because we're at the point where, when you read something about these places, as you discovered, you don't know whether it's right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. It's so much the print media. I mean, media is always kind of flawed all the way going back, but you realize that the print media from the day it happened is a lot more valuable than somebody's legends and stories that they rewrote 100 times online. And, you talk about like these movies that's come out. A lot of people either, one, don't realize that they're based on true stories to begin with, or two, they take this as that's 100% the factual account of what happened in that location because it said it's a true story. No, it says it's based on a true story.
Yeah, so the critical thinking is missing, right? Like, and that's part of what I hope to bring to shows when I get asked on as a guest is I want to bring back the critical thinking in regards to what these people are saying, because I mean it's important. There's a fine line between what's important to respecting the person's experience, because they're telling their experience and often they're pouring their heart out, as to what happened to them. Like they feel that 100% this happened, but there's also a line where like a professional like myself has got to bring the reality in to what this might be as well. Like I've had cases on shows where, they've shown video clips of something and and it's not to discount the person's experience that they had or that they felt they had, but the video evidence after you take it to the videographers and the experts that I've got, and there's nothing in the video. And there's a point at which you have to honor that, like respect the people enough to tell them the truth. Right. And I think that's also a really big part of this. If there's nothing there, tell them there's nothing there. That's a good thing, right? It's a good thing. It's a good thing to calm stuff down. But I think, when you're getting into when you're getting into people getting, like emotional and, and they want something to be so bad, sometimes, or they're just so overwrought that everything is looking paranormal to them. You have to bring some reality back in and whatever. So I think it's interesting to see where the media has kind of taken the field.
Absolutely. Now, when you've done these cases and stuff, like you've done personal investigations in that as well, right? And how do how often do you come across these cases where you go to somebody's house and they tell you, well, this is the whole story of my house and this is, when it was built and who lived here and stuff, and you do the research and you find out that the story that they thought was true is completely infactual, completely wrong, and you kind of got to back them up and say, well, this is actually what happened here, and how's that work?
Well, with Canada's very new. We're only 150 some odd years old as a country. And then before that, we had an incredible Indigenous population here. So it's the knowledge that people have tends to be relatively accurate only because the houses are relatively new. So we don't have a lot of old areas in Canada. We do in the east, like you get into Quebec and Montreal and places like that, and you get the older vibe there. But you come out west and you don't really see a lot of old places. Canada doesn't take care of their old buildings well, so most of it either burns down or it's torn down. So a lot of these houses don't have a ton of history. And what I've found is that more often than not, the activity that's going on in the house very, very rarely has anything to do with the property. It's more often than not that it has to do with the actual people involved. And so you kind of have to take it moment by moment, because I think many times you get into these types of cases and immediately people are looking for this, horror story that's happened right in the past. There's like a mass murder or something crazy that's going on. But when you look into actual, like, factual true parapsychology, most of this really does stem from a living agent. It really does deal with the people themselves. So you get hauntings, you get what people would consider like spirits and things like that in the house. But usually what people are receiving, it has to do with their own state of being, their own receptivity, what they've got going on. So very rarely do we dig, or do I dig too far into the past. Most of the answers I find are pretty present.
So when we do private investigations and stuff, our team goes out and does that. A lot of the times, these people are looking for this quick fix. Can't you get rid of it? Can't you just banish it?
Absolutely.
Sage and do it. And that stuff can help, but at the end of the day, it's still something that you have to take ownership of and work on yourself too. There's a reason this stuff is connected to you. This is a reason it's following it. So what do you suggest, and how do you go about that in your work?
Yeah, I mean, I wrote a whole book on it called Teaching the Living, and it's the core foundation of parapsychology that people just don't want to acknowledge. And like you say, they want the quick fix. They want it to be something that is outside of themselves. And the reality is nothing is outside of us. We are the projectors of our reality. We are the receivers of energy. We are the mecca of everything that goes on in our world. And for some reason in the paranormal, people think as soon as there's something weird going on, it can't be my fault, right? And I mean, I don't mean to say fault in terms of blame, but there's a responsibility, like you were saying, there's an ownership about what's going on. And when people really delve into the real core of true parapsychology that's studied in universities like Northampton and Edinburgh and Yale and universities like that, you begin to realize very quickly that, number one, we're capable of a lot more than what people think we are. We're not the meat suits running around, to use that cliche. We are projecting energy. We're projecting focused thought that can move objects, that can, and we know this isn't something that's, been, that's not woo-woo thinking. We have many white papers that have told us that this is something that people can do. The Monroe Institute, for example, actually teaches classes on it. If you want to go learn how to harness psychokinesis, you go to the Monroe Institute. But I think that's the big thing, is that when we realize that we have a say, and that our emotional center, what we're projecting, and what we have healed, what we haven't healed, what we've got going on up here, is actually influencing our environment, man, everything starts to shift. And so my program, Teaching the Living, which I've taught all over the world, is focused around getting people to understand that you have to look here first. Wait a minute, what's going on with me? Because this activity almost always is a reflection of something you've got going on within you. Many people that are having negative experiences with paranormal activity have some serious unhealed crap that they have not dealt with, and it's projecting outwards. Either they're attracting a mirror of what's going on within them in the form of like a negative entity or something like that, or they're projecting it out in poltergeist activities. So they are what they call the living agent, and things are stacking up and blowing up and whatever, and it's them. It's coming from that unhealed, repressed emotion. So and then on the flip side of it, people that are having a wonderful experience with this stuff, like, I mean, I've had beautiful experiences with non-physical, and but it's one of those things where you have to keep yourself in just you're healed and cleaned up, and get your stress, get that stuff under control, and then that connection can happen. You can talk to your loved ones, you can talk to and have these beautiful experiences with it, but it really does start with the living person.
Good. So where do you suggest people start? Obviously your book and that, but how do people get themselves together that way? What are some steps that you suggest to people?
Oh man, I think the number one thing is to let go of probably everything that they've heard on television. That's one of the things, because I mean, TV perpetuates a lot of myths, like sort of the tortured souls myth, that people are stuck and belabored and they can't move on. And I mean, and there's no evidence for that happens at all. So I think, it really comes down to, stop listening to what you're hearing on TV. These narratives can be traced back to very specific people, which is something that many don't realize. Like the stuck person narrative actually traced back to a psychiatrist, a German psychiatrist. The orb phenomenon traces back to a guy by the name of David Oster. And Fujifilm went to battle with him, trying to explain that orbs are not they're not spirits. So there's a lot of these narratives that can be traced back very, very specifically. So letting go of that, number one. And number two, I think the big one is have the courage to look in the mirror and be really, really honest about where you are. We're at the point with society where we kind of just either like dumb things down, or we're inheriting that victim mentality, right? We mistake the victim mentality and the blame for power, and it's not. It's one of the weakest positions that you can be in. Everything's going wrong and it's everybody else's fault. So I think those are some of the big things, is really, really get honest with like who you are. The second one is be who you are on purpose. And that is what I mean by that is get into every day figuring out how you are going to get yourself together. What's your passion? What are you doing? Are you doing the same things yesterday that you were doing today because it's just a new day and that's what you did yesterday? Stop doing that. Get into practice stuff like meditation. How can you get into the moment? Meditation is huge, 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 huge. And the reason why that's so effective is because it stops that negative chatter in your head. It doesn't have to be necessarily that you find a better feeling thought right away. But if you can get into that meditation, even for 15 minutes a day, it's that moment where you can sort of stop that negative flow and allow in that non-physical consciousness that you want, that pure positivity that you want. So those are some really, really big ones. That's when I'm advising clients, those are some of the basics that I go after. And another thing I often tell people, start an appreciation journal, start a gratitude journal, 5 things a day, 5 things at the end of the day that you have to write down that you're grateful for, and find the feeling place of it. Because those connections are what's going to start allowing more of those experiences into your life. If you're feeling appreciative, if you're feeling grateful, that's the stuff that's coming in, right? So if you're not allowing in that negative stuff, it's got to be replaced by something. So that's one of the major things that I often recommend to people is change your focus, get off of what's going wrong and start figuring out what's going right. Focus on that until you're blue in the face. And honestly, the stuff around you starts to change. You don't need a magic wand or some crazy, Looney Tune dance around your house by somebody that's going to charge you $500. Mm-hmm. It's not, like you're saying, it's not going to work. You have to do what feels good to you.
Absolutely. Very well said. Do you you teach these classes like in seminars and stuff, right? Do you do like one-on-one training as well with that?
I have in the past. I haven't for a while. Now it's just like a lot of requests and stuff like that. My focus has been sort of trying to get this message out in a mass way that people can use. And that's why Mike Brown and I started Supernatural Circumstances. We wanted to bring this information on a wide scale where we were not going to be edited to the public for free in a way that everybody can access. And that's why we started the podcast, was because we wanted to bring the best minds in the world to bear on some really fun cases, really interesting stories, but without the bullshit, to make sure that we had a platform where we could look at these cases in an interesting, nerdy and fun way for everybody to join in on, and have literally some of the best minds on the planet start to weigh in on what's going on. And we learn something every time we have somebody on. There is not one show we've done where I haven't gone, well, I didn't know that half an hour ago. Yeah, it's really cool.
Mm-hmm. I think that's my guilty pleasure of doing this show is, I get to talk to all these people, because there's so many people in the field and stuff. And I don't want to say like you idolize them, but you look at their work and you're like, oh man, they're really cool.
Yeah.
Like I wish I could talk to them. And the average person doesn't have that opportunity. If you don't go to conventions, and some people don't do the convention circuit and stuff, and you don't get to meet them, and just having that platform where you can have this show and pick somebody's brain is awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot of people too, many of the minds that are really pushing this field forward aren't on the convention circuit. These are people that are in the lab every day or going out to cases every day. They're not on television. They're not names people are going to know right off the bat. One of the people that I've so enjoyed interviewing, who Mike and I have just come to absolutely adore, is Dr. Eben Alexander. And for those who don't know who he is, he experienced an incredible near-death experience. He's a neurosurgeon, and he wrote the New York Times bestseller, Proof of Heaven. Fantastic book. He's written multiple books since then. And we've had him on 3 times with Karen Newell, his partner. And every single time it's like you feel like you're on cloud 9 when you've left these people. Like, they're so phenomenal. And what made Eben's story so interesting, and like one of the reasons why we had him back so many times, is because many of the skeptics argue that, well, near-death experience is just the brain hallucinating and giving you a better death kind of thing, whatever. Eben was brain dead, like brain dead. He had no brain function whatsoever. He had a very, very rare case of a type of meningitis that actually stuck him in a coma, and his brain was just off. And he had these phenomenal experiences. He actually saw his sister, who had passed away, who he didn't know. And he didn't know who she was until he saw her in a photograph later on when he woke up. And there's so many things. So phenomenal things. But here you've got somebody who has the background. Here he is. He's a neurosurgeon. He was a staunch skeptic before this happened. And so it's people like that I think more people need to hear from. Because it's not the people that are just running the convention circuit, and there's nothing wrong with that. But so many of these people, I think, in the academic world, who have really, really they're publishing the state-of-the-art research in the paranormal. They're not getting the attention, and that's crazy to me. Just crazy.
You're absolutely right. I have interviewed some phenomenal people on the show, and people have never heard of them. And that's why, because they're not on television. And people tend to think that, well, if you're not on television, you don't know anything, because you're the people that are out there doing it, boots on the ground kind of research. No, they're paid to be on a show, and for the most part, I mean, granted, they were obviously doing the research and stuff to begin with to get interested and pulled onto the show and all that stuff. And that's great, but they're not the ones that are out there making the breakthroughs and researching, because they're spending half of their year on the road filming this television show. And how much research and, information can you get when you're traveling all the time and doing that? So, yeah,
it's a very unique group that is able to do that, and it's a very small market of the people that actually put the work in. And the damn thing is that you talk to a lot of these incredible people that are out there, many in the UK. The UK has had a phenomenal, the UK and the US really have had such a phenomenal run of parapsychologists over the years that nobody has heard of, which is nuts. Oftentimes you go to the convention and you mention something like the Society of Psychical Research, and people are like, what the hell is that? Or the Canadian Society of Psychical Research, my great-great-grandfather's organization, and they ask, well, I've never heard of that. Well, that's the cornerstone of what we do. How can you not have, how far have you really gone into this research if you don't know who is, if you don't know who Gurney is, if you don't know who like Eben Alexander is, people like that. It's nuts how little people know, and then they come on these shows and call themselves experts. It's scary. It's really scary.
Absolutely. And I admit I don't know a lot of those people, but there's so much out there to learn. We do everything, from paranormal, Bigfoot, UFOs and stuff with our research here in Wisconsin, and we focus on what we're working on. So we have a very limited, there was a sighting, we need to do research on this and go in that direction. And that's where we focus. But there's so much stuff, and like you said, talking about certain people, and then I get interested in that stuff, and that leads you down this whole other rabbit hole, and it's just amazing the stuff that's out there to learn.
Yeah.
I do want to give you a chance. I mentioned briefly in the beginning, you have such an amazing bio. I tried to skim through it, and
It's a lot.
I skimmed the whole episode reading the bio, but you want to talk about your great-great-grandfather and
Yeah.
how he got started, because it seems like he's, a very influential, important person for Canada and paranormal research. So you want to tell us more about that?
Oh, absolutely. Albert Durrant Watson was an incredible historical figure here in Canada, and everybody in parapsychology needs to know this man's name. I don't know how he has been forgotten to the level that he has, because he was his home now is actually a historical home in Ontario. You can go visit. He was a noted and published poet, astronomer, and over top of that, he was a extremely famous physician. Had a huge role in the medical community and the universities here in Canada. And he took a very controversial move when he ended up studying a fellow that was a medium, and AD was very similar to Eben Alexander in the sense that he was a very, very staunch skeptic. I mean, this was a guy who spent his entire life in the medical field. So he was a very staunch skeptic. And when he got exposed to a channeler by the name of Louis Benjamin, he really had to rethink what he had learned. And he really came at this from a standpoint of, like a scientist. He came at this as a medical professional, as a researcher, going like, hey, well, what is exactly going on here? And by the time he was done, he ended up publishing 2 books, transcribing all of these sessions, and said, people can think what they want, but this happened, and these events happened within these sessions, and there were so many witnesses that were there to observe this. So him and one of his best friends, E.J. Pratt, and a number of other another notable people in Ontario at the time were witnessing this phenomenal occurrence of this channeling of Louis Benjamin, of this group of entities that called themselves the humble ones of the 20th Plane. And the books were so far ahead of their time. He was growing up in a time and working in a time where people were either like super into like the spooky fake seances, or they were just like, this is all bullshit. So he came at this in a completely different way. And the books are extremely positive. The messages were extremely uplifting. You read them and you feel better for reading these books. And and many people came out against him and said, like, what in the hell is an academic doing publishing this crap? That's basically the attitude they had. And he was slammed in the press. It was all over the news. It was all over and whatever. And he said, you know what? You take it or leave it. That's what happened. So phenomenal man. And his works you can read his poetry and everything. Google A.D. Watson and you'll find him. But he's got an incredible legacy, and part of what I do is to keep that going. So yeah, amazing man.
Yeah, there's so much negativity in all this stuff. Anytime somebody says anything is haunted or there's paranormal activity, it's always negative. And that's why, like, when people call us to do investigations at their house and stuff, I said, well, what's happening? And they said, well, I've been having a really hard time in my life, and my grandma's picture just keeps falling over on the dresser. And it's like, well, were you close with your grandma? Has she passed? Oh yeah. Do you ever think that she's the one that's just there telling you, hey, I'm here, it's okay, breathe? Oh, I never thought of that. And it changes so much for people. They don't realize there's good, and it's not always this demonic entity that's throwing their grandma's picture around. And it's just so interesting.
No, it's true. It's so true. It's that the positive side of it gets absolutely negated. And what people don't realize, or many people don't realize, is that we are a part of that non-physical energy. We are an extension of that non-physical energy. It's not just like, these spirits over there somewhere that do something different. No, we are that as well. We just, happen to be a little bit more tuned in right now to the physical things. But the reality is that we are that non-physical also, and we are tuned into it if we allow for it. This stuff is really paramount to joy. It is about joy. This is about wonder. This is about these spirits that pass over, for lack of a better word. It's really like for them stepping into the next room. And the more I've done this, the more communication that I've had, because I've had people in my life pass away and then reach back out and whatnot. And they are wanting that connection. They want that connection. They want you to come in and talk to them and celebrate them and, reconnect with them as they are now. They're not that grumpy old grandfather that you remember anymore. Now it's their pure positive energy. They are pure non-physical energy. And it's amazing. It's incredible. And when you look at it statistically, what's really fascinating is that the majority of people who have these experiences, and I'm talking like in the 90 percentile, report something really, really positive happening. But TV doesn't tell you that. TV is like, oh, no, it's like, it's predominantly awful. That's just statistically not true. So, again, it's like people have got to really critically think through this.
Yeah, that's going right back to the whole TV perpetrating their story and stuff again, because like we said in the beginning, this is the narrative of the show. This is what we want the show to be about, and that scary aspect sells. And that's terrible, because how many people are going to sit down? Well, look at, there was John Edwards had the long running show and stuff of these positive messages and stuff, and look how popular that was.
Yeah.
To think that the positive side of this stuff doesn't sell as well as the scary negative, I can't believe that.
Yeah. No, I think if they dared to make the move over to that other messaging, I think it would go over exceptionally well. And I've had this argument with the networks. I've had this conversation with a number of producers over the years, and there's a lot of producers that are out there that see the value in that. But then when they bring it up to the networks are like, oh, no, that's not what we want. We don't know if that's going to work, but we know that this works. So bring that back, make more of this thing that we already sold the one time and it did really well. They don't like to go outside the box. They're very narrow in their thinking. And, they don't like to take risks. TV networks never like to take risks. That's why everything's basically, you see these game shows and stuff and everything's set up because they can't afford. They can't afford to take the risk and making this an unpredictable outcome. Right. Mm-hmm. So, I think you're totally right. I think this would do exceptionally well. And, and I think people are ready for that. We've got so much negativity in the news, the media. I mean, you got people making stories up and claiming that it's true. You've got, it's nuts. And I don't know what I'm sure the American media is probably in a similar state to the Canadian media, but you can't turn on the news anymore and trust what you're hearing. So it's time to make that shift from fear to hope, because people need it and people are craving it, So I think if networks put that out there, I think it would be gravitated to massively.
Oh yeah. And I don't even want to say the people, we hear this in the cryptid world and stuff, the Bigfooting world and stuff, too, is, that it's not necessarily the person that's telling you the story is making it up. It's that the person that told them or the information that they got isn't correct. And they're telling you the God honest truth of this is what happened. This is what I believe. And they're right. They're not lying. They're not making up. They're not trying to perpetrate this hoax, but down the road, somebody did, you get a trail camera picture or something. Well, they didn't hoax it. They had nothing to do with it. They don't know what this thing is in their trail camera. But somebody found their trail camera and walked in front of it and now is having a big laugh because this guy's looking like an idiot and he's getting called all these names because, well, you hoaxed this and you did that. Nope, you didn't. And people need to realize that, truth goes back farther than the person telling you sometimes.
Oh, absolutely. And I think nowhere is more prominent right now than in the world of cryptozoology. it's wild. And you know, the funny thing is I see a lot of these shows spinning it the same way they did with hauntings. You know, everything's evil and bad and terrible and maniacal and out to kill you, and it's like, that's just not true. You know, I'm hugely invested in dogman research, because that's been something that is very prevalent here in Alberta. We've got so many, we got lots of those and lots of Bigfoot. We got every paranormal critter on the planet. And you know, and that's the one thing that caught me right off the bat. I mean, I've been blessed enough to see dogmen a number of times here in Alberta, and I was absolutely struck by how gorgeous they actually are. They're some of the beautiful faces you'll ever see in the world. And you know, you turn on the TV and they're showing these recreations and they're making them look like gargoyles, right? Like, they're just terrifying, these gargoyles. And it could not be further from the absolute truth. And here's a great example of misunderstanding history. You know, many people have come forward, and their excuse for dogman being evil has been, oh, well, you know, if you start reciting Christian scripture at them, then they walk away, and blah, blah, you know, this kind of thing. And what people don't realize is that when you actually delve back into the indigenous relationships that the First Nations people had with them, and it goes back, specifically in BC and Alberta, it goes back a long time. Like, there's stories of them trading with them. They had a beautiful relationship with these entities, and then colonization happened. So in you come with this, you know, these sort of Christian crazy, you better do what we say or your family's going to die. And they did here, you know, and you've got these creatures that have moved through the world watching this happen, right? So and then you're going to come in and you're going to recite Christian scripture at them. Well, what do you think is going to happen? I mean, they're going to take one look at you and go, oh, we did this once. We're not, you know, we did this once. We're not going through. And so some of my friends and I, some of my colleagues and I, when we go out, one of the first things we do, because they're indigenous, they're Métis, and which is one of the big tribes here up in Canada, and we start with a blessing and a thank you and a smudge, and we give an offering. We use the old traditions, and we have had beautiful experiences by doing that, and they have been extremely receptive. And it's been nothing but positivity from them. And it's like, so again, it's like, just have some empathy and do the work. Understand what, you know, you've got basically another culture here that has been through hell. Like, start, you know, showing some sympathy instead of going around and waving a cross around and saying that these things are evil. You know, it's so unfortunate.
Yeah, I mean, look at all your gorilla documentaries and stuff, right? So here's these animals that are out there, you know, very similar to what we believe Bigfoot and stuff is. And, you know, and do you portray the, you know, well, let's take, you know, King Kong and stuff out of the picture and some of the other ones, but Rampage and whatever have you. But in just, you know, TV shows and stuff, how often do you see like killer gorillas? You know, you don't. So why are you portraying these other creatures, these other, you know, species and entities and stuff in that light?
Yeah.
I would be remiss. My audience would hate me if I didn't ask you to talk a little bit more about you've seen these dogman creatures.
Yeah, we've had some phenomenal experiences, and it was something I never ever in my whole life thought that I would be witness to ever. I was very much you know, in the parapsychology, haunting, psychokinesis type stuff. And I've had to, first of all, I've had to let go of that being in a separate category, because I've learned over the years that there is no separate category. Everything, all of this is connected. Everything is consciousness. All of this is connected. But yeah, I've had some phenomenal encounters where these things, they don't get super close. They are extremely shy, very nervous, but want connection. And I've had a number of experiences now. One of my favorites being the one night we had been out in this area in southern Alberta, and they often are found with the coyote packs here because it's a favorite food, I think. And so you'll hear them hunting the coyotes, and it's crazy. Like you hear these things howl, and it's unlike anything you've ever heard in your life. It's wild. Just massive lungs and just so loud. And we had been out the one night, and we could hear them, and we could hear this coyote pack running around. And I had a workshop with me. I had a group of about 13, 14 people, and we came around one of the corners on this property, and the property was like an acreage, so it was like lined with woods, like really, really dense woods. And one of the things that we would see very quickly when we knew they were around was their eyes, and their bright, bright, bright lights. And everybody says, oh, it's eye shine. It's not eye shine. It's almost like an internal glow. They're so bright. They look like LED lights. And we saw one of them come up. We usually came in usually between 3 and 4 of them at a time. And the one that we had kind of gotten to know as the leader, or like the alpha in the group, he wasn't going anywhere, and he was looking and looking and looking at us. And everybody in the group, we'd prepped them long before, saying, don't run, everybody stay calm. Chances are we are going to see something. So everybody was really good. And it stood up on his 2 feet from in the woods, because we saw the eyes raise. And I thought, you know what? He's trusting enough to be here, and I got to say something. So I took a couple of steps out of the group very slowly and started to talk to it. And I just said, thank you for coming tonight, because you are extremely special. And we know what this means to have your presence here, because they are so elusive. You don't see them every day. And they were there. And I said, thank you. And I just started using the same tone that I would, I've got a little python at home. I use the same tone that I would talk to him, just loving and friendly, and just trying to exude that. And lo and behold, if he didn't start walking towards the group, and he was steadily walking towards, and he kept eye contact, like, he wanted me to know, no surprises. Like, I'm here, I'm coming forward. You've invited me, I'm coming for. So I thought, okay, here we go. I'm not reneging on this now. And he came forward just enough that I could see his face in the light of his eyes. His eyes were shining so brightly. And so I could see just this part of his face, and then the great big ears. They have huge, huge ears. And one of the most beautiful wolf faces you will ever lay eyes on, like just from another planet, just gorgeous, except they're on 2 feet. So you're just like, what's this disconnect going on, because they're so tall. And he came so far forward, and then on the opposite property there was a dog that barked, and as soon as the dog barked, he just went like this, and I was like, oh no. And he turned around, and they dropped to all fours, and then he took off, and then the other ones that were flanking him took off, and whatever, because they're nervous. Like, they tend to be very, very nervous. It's like, what was that? I don't know what that is. I gotta go. So off they went. And it was seriously a moment I will never, ever, ever forget. So the few people that I work with now and whatever, we go out often to some of these locations where we've known that they're sort of roaming, and we go and say hi and pay a visit. But it's to label these things as horrible and evil is a massive mistake. Massive.
I mean, look at any animal. Your dog at home is going to bite you if you poke it in the eye, or do something that it doesn't like. It's just,
or if you present fear. Right.
Yeah.
So and that's another thing that, I've really noticed with a lot of these cases. When you listen to these people tell their stories, they immediately say, oh my God, I was terrified. I didn't know what to do. So I started yelling at it, or I picked my gun up, or sorry, but it's like, if you do that with any animal, they are going to lose their shit. And so rightly so. Like, if you go up to any dog, even if you can have the friendliest dog in the world, and you are showing fear, the odds of you getting bitten by that dog are pretty high. They go up substantially, because the dog knows you're afraid, and it doesn't know why you're afraid, but it knows you're fearful and you're not in a stable energy, and it's like, as soon as you're not stable within yourself, that dog's going to tell you what's up. And so, I mean, if you're getting growled at or there's a reason, and it's very similar. So yeah, I just, if people are having these encounters with these things, think about it that way. But they're definitely not out to hurt anybody. That I know for absolute certain.
Yeah, I agree. It's like you said, as any animal that you do that to is gonna, it's not just these things, and people are always so paradigm shifting. That's what it is. You see these things, you don't know what to make of it, and your mind is racing so fast, and
and they're weird looking, right? Like they're pretty weird looking. I mean, you see one of these guys stand up and they've got exceptionally long arms and, weird. Like, I mean, they're very disproportionate. So your brain's trying to fit this into a category and it can't, because it's like, I don't know what the hell I'm seeing. Like, what is this? So, you can understand why people are fearful, but it's like, but don't demonize them for something for them reacting to what you're projecting, right? And it's the same thing when we get into anything, take ownership and responsibility for what you're bringing to the table, because it's being received, right? And it's like, if whatever's they're going to receive it however they receive it. So I mean, we have to take ownership in all of that. And I think Sasquatch it falls into that same category.
Well, look at just like, your typical animals too, like snakes or spiders or bats. People are notoriously afraid of this. Look at Halloween. Yeah. Everybody's, puts up bats and all this stuff. And, like, why are you afraid of these things? These things aren't going to hurt you. They're not out to attack you. And it's just the way that the media, as we've said a couple times here, is just perpetrated this stuff. So.
Yeah, and I mean, and I could definitely speak from experience, because I have a snake. The little guy that's on the cover of my book back there, Galen. That's my little boy, and he just turned 20 years old this year, and he's probably got one of the kindest, sweetest hearts you'd ever want to meet, and he's been an ambassador for a lot of people, a lot of snakes, because people see him and they're like, oh my God, he's adorable. I'm like, oh yeah, he's adorable and he's kind. So, there he is. And, and he's on the cover of the book because he has given me so many lessons in understanding how to be in the present moment, how to be in joy, how to follow that instinct that we're all getting from source. I mean, he is just like a receiver for that. And whatnot. And there's a couple of stories in there about him, but he has been such an incredible teacher. And I tell you, I've been bitten by cats, I've been bitten by dogs, and I've not one time been bitten by Galen. So
Awesome. Well, I was going to bring this up at the end again because we haven't talked about it, and you kind of led right into it, which is perfect. So you have this other book out as well. We talked about your first, or this is your second one, correct? The
second one
was
yep.
First. Yeah. So this is your second book. And I would like you to kind of tell us a little bit about it. But first of all, there was something else on the cover that caught my attention. Your foreword is written by Chad Lewis.
Yes.
And I'm pretty good friends with Chad. We travel all over Wisconsin with him to different events and stuff. I'm very familiar with him, and I saw his name there and I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. How did you and Chad hook up there to work on this?
Oh gosh. I've been friends with Chad for a good number of years, and I wrote the foreword for his book, Winter Legends and Lore. And then I did all the art for his book as well. So yeah, but before that, we've known each other forever. He was actually the first guest on Supernatural Circumstances that we had. And, but he is a phenomenal human being and is so incredibly supportive and knows this stuff inside and out. He's just an absolutely amazing human being. And he's one of those people that anybody that, is within his path is better for it. So I just have so many amazing things to say about him, and he's going to actually be a part of an upcoming series that I'm working on right now called Real Monsters and Where to Find Them, which is going to be out in the next probably year. Yeah, so he wrote the foreword. It's so generous. But the book itself is about the fact, kind of exactly what we've been talking about, is that we really do, first of all, stand on the shoulders of giants in parapsychology. Mm-hmm. And every single one of them, as I was researching this book and coming to understand the field, is that every one of them had an instinct to follow. that they knew something was out there that was bigger than them. They knew there was more. And to the point where many of them, like, for example, J.B. Ryan of the Ryan Research Institute, actually quit his job as a tenured professor at Duke University in order to go back to school, went back to Harvard to study parapsychology, to relaunch his career. I mean, he risked everything. And then, of course, that became eventually the Ryan Institute. But every single one of the people that we, as I say, that we stand on the shoulders of, and people today that I've talked to have an instinct that there is more, and that we are connected to something so important. So this was the lessons that I've learned over the years of doing this. I've been doing this for over 20 years. And these are some of the really key takeaway lessons. And we talk about cases in the book. I talk about, just really strange stuff that's happened throughout history, and tell the stories of some of these amazing people, like Eileen Garrett, one of the most famous mediums, that her granddaughter, she founded the Parapsychology Foundation in New York, and her granddaughter, Lizette Coley, runs it now. But Eileen Garrett, her story is like a superhero story. In World War II, she was basically a spy, using her psychic abilities to get news to people who were missing soldiers and loved ones and whatnot. And she was using her abilities to, like, remote view and all that kind of a thing to help these people. And I mean, she was being hunted by Nazis, like these insane stories. But that instinct, that drive, knowing that there's a calling that we all have, and that if we get tapped in, tuned in, and turned on to this, that we can receive this connection, this message. And it's phenomenal. It's really, really neat. So beginning to end with the book, it's an absolute adventure. You're going to put the book down and want to go out and follow this, and get into this field yourself, because you can't. And many people, I think, are going to relate to that feeling, is that, wait a minute, like, I can't put this stuff down. I want to get into this field and understand more about who we are.
I think that definitely flows with Chad's work as well. A lot of his books have that same feeling to get people to go out and experience it. And I think it's really cool.
Oh, absolutely. And that's why, I was passionate about him asking him to write this forward, because it's that sense of adventure that really should be driving people in this, not the fear, not the, oh my God, something's going to come out of the bushes and kill me, but the actual, the adventure. It's the human experience of understanding how we are connected to all of this.
Yeah. Not just sitting on your couch and watching TV shows, going out and living your life, not watching someone else do it. Yeah.
Absolutely. And to have these experiences for yourself, if you can get out and allow it. And it's not about going out and finding it. It's going out and allowing it in. Many people are out there kind of like looking and hunting for something to happen. It doesn't work like that. You have to allow it in. And, that's why I always recommend, like I said before, things like meditation to people, anything that can bring you into that moment and just be able to let go, allow it in, because it's there. It's always around us. It's always floating around. We're just usually way out of sync with it. So if you can get in sync with it, you can have these experiences too.
Awesome. Fabulous. It has been an absolute pleasure. Like, there's so much, like I said, your bio is huge on this thing, and people need to check it out and look at all the stuff that you've worked on and done. And it's just fabulous. And I think we've shared so many great stories. I love learning about your great grandfather and his work. And I love keeping, people like that alive and their stories, and making sure that, like we said earlier, that people know that there's people doing important stuff out there that aren't on TV, and that you can learn so much more from listening to shows like this, listening to shows like yours, of people that put those people front and foremost, that, you want to know about paranormal. You're not going to learn about it on TV. You got to delve deep and find the people that are actually working and researching it. So
absolutely. And what I would really encourage people to do, that are watching this, is there's an amazing website called the Psi Encyclopedia, PSI Encyclopedia. And it's probably one of the best resources for people who want to find out about the history of this and what has been discovered and what continues to be discovered going forward. And it is, get involved with organizations like the Society of Psychical Research, get involved with the Rhine, take their courses, get involved with the right agencies, and you're not going to lose the magic that you think you're getting from the TV. I think that's one of the big things. I think people think, well, if I do that, then I'm going to know like there's going to be some sort of magic. No. This is where the magic is. This is it. And it's not there. It's not where people think it is. It's in the actual research when you realize, oh my God, this isn't a fake TV show. This is real. Mm-hmm. These are people that are doing this for real, and I can participate. And that's where, it feels like you're going to Hogwarts. Like it's amazing. It's so neat.
Awesome. I wrote that down. I'll put that in the show notes for everyone listening as well when this comes out, because obviously, like I said, if anybody had any comments or anything in there, we are pre-recorded right now, but we'll get that in the show notes so that when you see this episode, it'll be there for you. We have a link to your website and your podcast website. Where can people find you for those just listening, and anything else that you got coming up?
Sure. So you can find me on entityseeker.ca. And you can find links to everything there, including the Supernatural Circumstances podcast. But you can you can subscribe to that wherever you podcast. We're Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio, you name it, we're there. So you can just search Supernatural Circumstances and you can subscribe. I highly encourage everybody to come on that journey with us. It's uplifting, it's fun, it's spooky, it's all of those things, but without the bullshit. So that's kind of where we stand on that. And I promise you, it's as magical as anything you could imagine. So those are my two main links, and you can get my books pretty much anywhere where books are sold, and you can order them off entityseeker.ca as well. And Chad's book is up there as well, Winter Legends and Lore, which I had a hand in. So
awesome. Chad sneaks in everywhere.
He does. He's just like that.
Yeah, for a while in Wisconsin here, we have the Hodag store, and
yes.
Ben Burnell and Carrie Bladorn, the museum there in town as well. And for a while, I couldn't have one episode where either Chad or the Hodag store was brought up by either myself or a guest. And I was like, oh, well, here's the weekly shout out to those guys because they're on every episode apparently. And now Chad's sneaking back into my world again.
Oh gosh, yeah, always. But he and so many of you guys down there are just you guys are all such pleasures to work with. And in Canada there's not a lot of us up here. So it's always really great to connect with everybody and to be able to share some of this stuff, because everything, like I was saying before, connects together. There's not really one experience that's separate from another. Everything is consciousness. So it's always amazing to be able to connect with you guys down there and see what you're doing
and make those connections. Like I said, it's so weird to see all those things kind of fitting together and everything. So it's amazing. Yeah. Very cool. Well, it has been my pleasure having you on. You're a wealth of knowledge and so much stuff going on there. It's like we could have 5 more episodes and still not even scratch the surface of this. So I appreciate everything that you do. And if you got anything else coming up or anything, let me know up in Canada, because we don't hear too much from you guys. As you said, there's not much trickling down here to us. So
yeah, it's crazy. I don't know, but that's one of the main ways that you can connect in with stuff that we're doing. And my co-host as well. I mean, he's amazing. He's got an incredible show called Dark Poutine, which is the #1 true crime podcast in Canada and whatnot. Amazing guy, and just wrote a book, which I also did the foreword for, called Strange, Spooky, and Supernatural, which is it's out in bookstores everywhere, but it's all based on supernatural circumstances and stuff like that. And there's lots to explore. There's tons. So
absolutely. Well, again, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate your time, and it's been an absolute pleasure having you. It's been a great episode.
Oh, thank you so much. This has been great. And yeah, happy Halloween, everyone.
And happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
I said, this will be aired the week before Thanksgiving. So happy Halloween belated. Happy Thanksgiving.
Yes.
Early. Awesome. Well, you take care, and I will talk to you later.
Sounds good.
All right, guys, that is our episode this week. It is absolutely a blast having Morgan here on the show. All the links that we talked about are in the show notes for anybody that's interested. Go ahead and click them down there. Make sure that you like, subscribe, and share her podcast and her work, as well as all things here on the Untold Radio Network. Until next time, guys, thank you all for watching. Thank you all for tuning in. And remember, we're all part of the paranormal spectrum. Be safe, take care, and I'll see you next week.
You seem to know something I don't. What's going on?